Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Monday, August the 10th, after the first of a 2-day break. After I don't know how long, after nearly 120 consecutive days, a 2-day break. And then I guess there'll be a little bigger break this week before we get back to next Monday's morning coffee time. But it doesn't seem like such a break for me because weekends here at the Hermitage, with the weather being so nice, we're able to have live gatherings. So we had people here offering the meal and sitting outside and discussing Dhamma on Saturday and Sunday. And yesterday, the family that came was interested to help out in the garden a bit. So actually, we've had quite a lot of help from Phil, who's here most mornings, and a few other people over the last week. So for a pandemic, our garden looks rather well due to the help of a few friends. So, and for them, I appreciate the extra help. So also, while people are still logging in here and getting their stream on, quite a few people sent me some feedback via email, and a few people also declared their commitments to keep some momentum going for themselves on a daily basis at this time of the morning, which is something I highly recommend. Good habits are easily broken. In fact, there's a lot where the Buddha talks about guarding against decline, backsliding, as it's sometimes translated. And even more broadly, just the importance of living in a way that is very heedful, cautious, careful. It's kind of like taking life seriously and giving each and every moment and interaction a sense of importance, which is quite difficult. I think there's a lot of countervailing human habits or dynamics. These days, we would even maybe say we're wired in a different direction. We're wired not to take every little thing so seriously and to give full, wholehearted attention to everything. You could even say that we can't. But somehow that plays out, works against us, especially where it counts. So in general, part of the whole of the spiritual path, not just in mindfulness, is seeing the value in countering that trend to living in a way that's overly casual, inattentive, and careless, and replacing that with a sense of care. And I think when we're devoted to the good, if you think of the elements of right intention in the path, in particular, loving kindness and harmlessness, metta and ahimsa. Those two qualities alone, if given importance and developed, made much of, really can have a very transformative effect in how it is that we interact with our life, ourself, and all other living beings. Just that. Trying to sort of relate to all of our interactions with a sense of friendliness and goodwill and kindness, and sensitive to doing no harm. And in reflecting on the Eightfold Path, I often break down the wisdom component, which is right view and right intention, into, one is a little more overarching and very much addressing how it is that we see and view and frame our experience, and then right intention, in some sense, is a more social dimension. So right view, in some sense, is a little more deep and connected with an inner understanding. And then right intention is the path factor connected with wisdom, which incorporates the outward relationship to other living beings and the sense environment in general too, because also included in right intention is nekama, which oftentimes translated as renunciation, but I think you can think more broadly of it as a sane, sober, and modest kind of relationship with the sense realm. So some of the modern interest and value that's giving to living a simple life and being happy with simplicity, I think is encompassed in this path factor of developing nekama. There's quite a bit of activity in the chat this morning. Clearly, you guys missed each other. Well, one of the things, since I've had just a little bit more time, is I'm able to catch up on some of the books virtually stacked up on my virtual end table. And one of the ones I'm enjoying reading, or actually listening to right now, something I got from our local library in audiobook form, is Bill Bryson's recent book titled The Body. And I'm a big Bill Bryson fan, as are actually quite a few of my monk friends. So that's where I got the recommendation. We should have a special list on Amazon, monk recommended. That would be an interesting. I mean, they have, I don't know, sort of the bestsellers in different categories, and then you have the New York Times bestseller list or whatnot. What would monk recommended look like? And just how wonderful would it be to have authors vying to be the number one monk recommended book in the country? Anyways, Bill Bryson, he's a popular favorite with several of my teachers and friends. And he has a new book titled The Body. And the audiobook form in particular, I can highly recommend. He reads it. And there's many times where I don't appreciate the author reading their own work. Oftentimes a monk is on, yes. Oftentimes a voice actor can do it more justice. But Bill Bryson reading his own work is a true winner. He's an American who lived for an extensive period of time in Britain, England, I believe, specifically. And I believe he is or was married to an English person. And he's got a very soothing voice. And I love books that zoom out and take the big picture. And one of his earlier bestsellers, of course. Brief History of Everything is one of my favorites. I've read it and listened to it several times over. And I think The Body is going to be added to that list of books that I come back to again and again. And I'm noticing as I'm going through it, it has something of the quality for me of the contemplation of the body, which is a practice that is recommended by the Buddha. And one of the ways it's formalized is in the contemplation of the 32 parts of the body, which is an ancient way of dividing the body up. In our Satipatthana retreat that we did with Ajahn Sona in the spring, he actually talked a little bit about this, which is good because it's not a practice that gets a lot of, or meditation actually, that gets a lot of attention. But there is this classical meditation in meditating on the body. And in particular, it's one of its aims is to help break this kind of strong over-identification, over-personalization that we have in our relationship to the body and bodies. And I'm kind of finding Bill Bryson's book is doing that for me in a really humorous and easy kind of way, and updated with all kinds of interesting stories and facts from modern science. Yeah, so conception of elements in the time of the Buddha was largely distilled down to the four elements of earth and fire, water, wind, or sometimes air. Sometimes they add in the elements of space and consciousness. But in modern times, of course, we think of the elements in different ways, like influenced by the atomic theory, of course, and our understanding of atoms, and now even quarks and quantum theory. So you can break the body down that way, but also chemistry. And he starts off the book with this kind of examination of what's a body worth. And I don't have the best mind for remembering facts precisely, but I think it's something like 40 unique elements in the body, 40 or 60. And there's nothing especially human about any of these elements. These elements are common to the universe. And it's interesting to think of the body as being reducible to just that. Just a few of them existing in great quantities, and many of them in almost infinitesimal qualities, like just a few atoms of this, a few micromilligrams of that. Well, anyways, as I was reading, I was wondering I can't help after 25 now, somewhere heading towards 30 years of life as a Buddhist monk and practicing, cultivating sort of not just the practice of contemplating the body, but more importantly, sort of looking at things through this lens of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That it is a predominant kind of framework for how it is that I view things. And to me, the value of contemplating bodies like this and breaking them down into their constituent parts is viewed through the prism of how it is that it affirms those truths But I've kind of drifted away from looking at Buddhism sort of as science, or as even a scientific endeavor. So even if the science isn't true, subjectively, what's true is that there is a tremendous benefit in reflecting on the truth, that the body can be broken down in these ways. And through reflection on the truth of how it is ephemeral, how it is constantly in motion and process, and in all the various dimensions, how it is not me, it is not mine, it's not myself. It's hard to think of a body as self when you know how long it is that atoms of matter exist, and that this very body is built up of atoms that have been around, at least in this chunk of the universe, for a long, long time, and will continue to be around for a long, long time, long after you are gone, long after I am gone, endlessly recycled. And then there's the whole contemplation of other beings that we recognize, in particular, and maybe of great timeliness, a contemplation on how this earth really belongs to the bacterium. And I was very pleased that he has something very close to sort of a phrase that bubbles up in my mind from time to time, like, it's probably more accurate to think of this earth as belonging to the bacterium. They've been here a lot longer than us. They're vastly more numerous than us. And it's nice that they allow us to live here for a little while. But in connection with the body, and especially with the sense of self, just like contemplating how it is that if we are anything, how we coexist, and how this very chunk of space that I habitually sense and identify as me and as mine is full of at least an equal matter, an equal amount of other creatures and other living beings and other non-living beings like viruses. And although we're probably feeling a bit sensitive about viruses and how vulnerable they can make us feel, we all coexist. And everything's playing its part in this kind of dynamic, this unfolding dynamic, which you could call life, but we could just call it the way it is. You don't even have to call it nature. It's just the way it is. With causes and conditions, it's like this. And there's this ever-flowing interaction of causes and conditions. And to learn the most important truths of what it is and how it is does allow us some ability to flow with it and alleviate friction and stress, dukkha. So there's a few thoughts about the body, and I can give strong recommendation, not just to the book, but into contemplating this practice of pulling apart the body and seeing it as causally conditioned, as constructed. And books like this are a nice kind of entryway into that. Something more direct and more conducive to samadhi is the formal and classical practice of contemplation of the body. So something as simple as reflecting on the body as not me, not mine, not self, as unbeautiful. And the classical way of doing this, which you're taught and trained when you ordain, whether it's as a novice or as a monk, is hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin. So that's almost all of what we can see of our bodies and other bodies in the classical way that the body is divided up in the contemplation of the 32 parts of the body. When we smile, you can see a little bit of the skeleton teeth. So the teeth represent that aspect of it. Good morning, Eleanor. Welcome back to the morning coffee. It's only been 2 days without your talks, and I've been feeling less motivated and lonely. Not sure what my question is, but if you could comment or advice on what I'm doing wrong. It's hard to know, but my encouragement would be to kind of reflect on what conditions, I guess, having something like this might be playing in your motivation and the sense of connection that you feel with our little online morning coffee time community. And then see if there's other ways that you can support that. You might need to use your imagination. Like everyone who's here, I'm sure, is off doing the same things, determined to cultivate goodness and understand themselves and develop their spiritual life in some sort of meaningful way. And just recollecting and knowing and trusting in that does give one a sense of connection and energy and motivation. And since it's not completely ending, and for the next couple of weeks I'll be here on Mondays, and then we'll resume something more daily, should keep yourself motivated so that you have good questions and some direct experience to reflect on when Monday comes around. So that's a couple suggestions. I don't know how you guys are able to use these icons so effectively. Maybe because you're on iPads or phones or something. I'm sitting in front of a computer, so it's not so easy. But thanks, Nadine, for your explanation of the "you've got this" icon. Okay, Eleanor, I'm just seeing your second part of your question here. I guess it's normal to feel lonely and down sometimes, even if I'm conscious about it. I still feel that way. I'm confused as whether I should be mindful about it differently. Well, you should be mindful about it, but like with any unskillful state, don't accept it. Make some effort to resolve it, is the Buddha's suggestion. And, there's many ways that we can challenge feeling low or feeling down. And, one is just to counter that kind of movement of energy, because it can just spiral and compound. So you want to find some way to bring energy and light kind of into your experience. And that can be through physical activity, that can be through practicing generosity, that can be through engaging in things that we find intrinsically motivating and useful. I often think of it as like honoring that which inspires us. Like many people, I have a slight tendency towards procrastination. And it just amazes me, like if you can just identify the next little step in honoring what it is that inspires you or something, how energizing and uplifting that can be. And we seem to have this pernicious sense as human beings to feel like that we're progressing, we're moving forward, we're developing, growing, accomplishing. And there seems to be something in our minds that's constantly evaluating ourselves in relationship to some imagined future state or goal. So, and in some sort of worldly way, we need to kind of honor that. Hopefully someday we can transcend that and learn how to be happy at ease in a way that's full and unconditional. And I see there's some other encouragement and thoughts here from Sumana, so that's nice. I see a lot of votes for having the monk recommended book list on Amazon. I wouldn't want it just to be me. I think I need to recruit a few of my friends and teachers to really flesh that out. I think at one point Amazon did have some ability for users to create lists. Maybe I should look to see if that still exists or not. So, Sumana, are you familiar with Ken Wilber's The Religion for Tomorrow? Would that be monk recommended? I liked it a lot, but it's big and requires a reread. I have not read any Ken Wilber for probably 20 years or so. I found him interesting when I was first in the monastery. We had a few of his books, and he's clearly a very intelligent and interesting person. So, but I'd say the more I read and contemplated his teachings and contrasted them with the Buddhist teachings, the less faith I developed in Ken Wilber. So, and these days he doesn't interest me at all, really. I think he's off on some other tangent and not necessarily aimed at what the Buddha was, as we know him through the Pali canon, was pointed at. Any practical tips or methods on practicing metta throughout the day? Is it the same method as in formal meditation, saying, may I be well, may I be happy, etc.? Well, I mean, there's many ways. There's several ways that metta meditation's referenced in the suttas, but the thing I would point out is the Buddha says that we should practice metta, or friendliness, goodwill, loving kindness, in body, speech, and mind. And so in some circumstances, we can, especially in formal meditation, engage in a very deep, profound, and refined way of exercising loving kindness through mental activity. But in the flow of life, it's not always so easy or appropriate. One could have little images, words, very short kind of metta triggers, you might say, or recollections that one could develop, and then develop some sort of practice of just recalling those. But in some sort of broader sense, if one spends some regular time practicing metta and considering the value of overcoming ill will and the habit to relate to sort of other beings through anger and ill will, and instead replace it with this devotion to unconditionally, like learning to unconditionally and without preference extend friendliness and loving kindness to other beings, and how many benefits that brings one. I mean, how relationships seem to work much more easily, how good it feels, how beneficial it is, on the mind in many aspects and ways. And if one just has some durable commitment to practicing and contemplating and reminding oneself and deepening one's appreciation for it, then you'll be more and more inclined in that way, and more um, looking for opportunities to relate to people in that way and to practice that way. And and over time, eventually, it just becomes more and more of a default or a habit of the way it is that you relate to other living beings. And it's, of course, strengthened and supported by all the other work and cultivation that we're doing, cultivating the path. So there's a few thoughts about that, both including just maybe having some image or word or little portable way to recollect and remind oneself. I suppose you could set a alarm on your phone to remind you, or a reminder on your phone from time to time. That would be the modern way. And then in a very practical way, like, sort of monitoring what's going on in your relationship to others, and sensitive to the drift to generating sort of anger and ill will towards other beings, then countering specifically with the activity of replacing that with goodwill. So you see yourself drifting into friction or anger towards somebody, or even worse yet, kind of wishing them harm or misfortune, and like breaking that drift and replacing it with a thought, almost like a prayer or a wish for wellness, and may they be well. And it doesn't necessarily need to have anything to do with you liking them or condoning what it is that they're doing or saying, or how they are, or what their habits are. It's about you emoting and relating in a more beautiful and skillful way, and protecting your own heart, but also interacting in a way that is beautiful and blameless. Okay, a Kalpak. Just a comment. This sort of body deconstruction, this body is not me, helps greatly with my degenerative spine pain. I wouldn't be able to tolerate without body meditation. Yeah, a great deal of, I think many conditions can be helped by normalizing or depersonalizing in a skillful way. There could be a neurotic or pathological sort of way of depersonalizing the body, but there is a positive and skillful way. And that's what we're praising here. Releasing the personalization and excessive attachment to the body. As Ajahn Buddhadasa would say, giving it back to nature. You've misappropriated these things. And when we see them with wisdom, then there's the movement towards letting go and relinquishment and giving back, giving them back to their rightful owners. Besides reading the book from Bill Bryson, what meditation practice would you recommend to lessen attachment to the body? Well, the classical informal practice of body contemplation is allowing into consciousness how the body is really like put together, and like in that way, like it's causally constructed. So like one of the classical analogies is like a chariot. You think of a chariot, and the modern day thing would be a car. You think of a car as a car, especially your favorite car. I guess if you're into cars, you know. So I guess these days a Tesla is popular, and for someone who likes a Tesla or something, it's like a piece of magic imbued with personality and spirit, magically good, magically attractive or something. But it's just a car. It's just tires and an engine and batteries and wires and metal. And if you see it in that way, like the magic kind of disappears. When the magic's there, there's a certain propensity towards lust and attachment and identification. And with cars, I think there's a lot of that for some people. Even people that aren't car people, they still have a lot of personality view with the brand and the make and the model of car they drive, the tires, the rims, the colors. But so one of the classical meditations is, you just pull it apart and see that there is no abiding essence in any of the one pieces or parts. It's just something that is put together, and also something that will fall apart. And that helps challenge this kind of enduring assumption, enduring inclination to sort of take it as me, as mine, and as myself. And as I like to remind people all the time, you really need to investigate the relationship between that and the desire structures which lead to dukkha. And at 8:42, we can't go down that branch right now. It's much too complicated and nuanced, but that is very fertile ground for contemplation. So, to answer your question, Lynn, it's like just building some practice where we pull the body apart. And it can be, as I said, as simple as just learning the 5 elements of the body, or come up with your own list, or look at the classical list of the 32 parts of the body. You can find that online, or you can find that in our chanting book. That's an ancient and classical way of breaking it down. Another one is to break it down into elements, like the 4 elements in particular of uh, earth, fire, water, and air, sometimes translated as wind. Again, as a way just to pull it apart and see it in a way that is empty of personality view. There's an emphasis also on the tendency in relating to the body is to relate on what's attractive and special about it and alluring. And there's a shaping of perception that happens around bodies. We hone in on and give excessive attention to the positive in bodies that we find attractive and the negative signs in bodies that we find unattractive, whether that's ourself or others. And in some sense, we don't attend fully to it as it is. And you especially see this in sexual attraction. When you see somebody who's attractive, your mind starts going through this very fast, out of control process of discerning what it is that it really likes, or what it is that sort of beats that drum of pleasant sight sensation. And it zooms in, it enhances and magnifies it, both through attention, but also through inner dialogue or inner kind of conscious processes to sort of enhance and magnify it. And things that might counter that or destroy that sometimes are suppressed, are pushed down. Things that we feel neutral, like the neutral signs, we don't tend to those. And even in relationship to ourselves, we can get stuck in this kind of dynamic of the parts we like and the bits we don't like. I've been watching in amazement as a multi-billion-dollar industry of changing our appearance through cosmetic and plastic surgery has just ballooned in modern times. And it's a worldwide epidemic in my opinion. Good morning, Ruanthi. Ajan, sometimes the mind won't sit still during meditation. Then the mind starts debating, should I go to the strategy list? Then I thought, is this the desire for becoming something else? Bhava tanha. So should I just start observing the mind? What is the right thing to do? Well, hopefully you're always observing the mind in some sense. And we don't want to shut that off. I mean, even as we progress successively through meditation towards serenity, even the serenity, the deep serenity of the jhanas, there is some oversight and discrimination that needs to be checking on the progress and identifying obstacles and removing them and balancing effort and many factors. So that kind of observation we don't want to sort of shut down, but I wouldn't encourage you, if the mind is not settling, just to pull back to some objectless awareness of observing the mind as a regular practice. I think it's better to have some sort of clear strategy of how to work with the mind. There will be plenty of observing the mind that happens and fits into the kind of practice. And this is the reason why I would encourage to have more of a structured and, if possible, even a tiered strategy of how to engage with the mind. So what might you do? I mean, and it's not your question about sort of is this bhava tanha? I mean, it could be bhava tanha, it could be vibhava tanha, it could even be sent kama tanha, in the sense that part of what motivates us to meditate is we want to feel pleasure. We want to feel the pleasure of the meditative state, and there's a lot of pleasure to be had there, and some of that can be kama tanha. It's maybe refined kama tanha. I mean, it's refined sense pleasure of the sense pleasure of the meditative state. So, and then, if things are not unfolding according to our inspiration and desire structure or something, then that can create some of that restlessness and agitation that's keeping the mind from settling down. So, and then we can make a case for bhava tanha. It's playing a similar sort of role. Like perhaps you think of yourself as, we have a conception or an idea that is motivating our meditation, and that could be bhava tanha. Like you're imagining the state of being that you want to be experiencing. It's like maybe a certain level of adeptness or control in the meditation, and then being the person experiencing the meditation in a particular way. Could be vibhava tanha, which is a kind of aversion to a negative version of that. So, it really could be any of those things. But I think the most important part of your question here is like what to do when the mind won't sit still. And I wouldn't highly rank just moving back to observing the mind. I would try to come up with strategies and then implement those. And it might be to add a little more work or specificity to how it is that we're meditating. So, for example, if we're trying to meditate on the breath in a way that is very wordless and we're just trying to observe the touch sensation of breathing in and breathing out, you can add some sort of marker or verbal discourse like counting or saying breathing in, breathing out. Or you can add even some movement. And if the mind's not settling down, we need, in some sense, to coarsen the object of meditation, perhaps, to be able to catch ourselves and engage with the object in a way that we can then progressively start developing the meditation. So sometimes we maybe need to change the object of meditation. Sometimes we maybe need to change the posture. Something that I often recommend for excessive restlessness is to go and do something like walking meditation or some form of mindful movement that can help develop conditions that are more beneficial than just sitting there with the restlessness and the wandering mind. Even if you don't go back to meditate, but you can also kind of just take a break and go do a little bit of that. See if that helps shift things or change the conditions, and then go sit down. And sometimes just the changing of the posture, the application to mindful movement of the mind, maybe even just enhancing circulation and breathing and movement or something can shift the conditions. And then maybe when you sit back down, the mind is in a more fit state to settle down. So, but having some sort of strategy and then implementing that, and then changing the strategy as you find things that help. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty soon here. Let's see if I can I'm not sure how much more I got to go. See if I can quickly answer a few of these here. What is the best translation of the Pali canon? The one you have, or the one you have available to you. So I've never been big on favorites. Like it's hard for me to distill things down and say, this is it. I do have things I like more than others, but I quite like Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations of the Pali Canon, which are available through Wisdom Publications, and some of them now are available freely through Sutta Central. Some of them they've released to be published there in digital form. So suttacentral.net is a very easy, accessible place to kind of connect with the translations of the Pali Canon, and then you can compare different translations there. So that might be the first place to kind of look, and then sometimes one gets a feel for one author's translations more than another's. While he doesn't have a complete translation of the major parts of the Pali Canon, Ajahn Sudanto from Metta Forest Monastery has a collection of anthologies called Handful of Leaves, which is freely available. And many of the most important suttas from the Pali Canon are translated there. Those are excellent translations. So yeah, that's a few thoughts for you through Joanna. I tried 32 parts of meditation to try to curb sexual desire, but it didn't find much benefit. Any tips? Well, I would say keep at it. Don't give up. But like overcoming sexual desire is pretty difficult, Douglas. So don't give up easy. And keep at it. So not just keep at practicing the 32 parts of the body, but keep at it. And, for some people, they don't find much benefit in that particular practice. And there are other ways. And, one like reading what the Buddha has to say in the suttas about sexual desire, I find can be very helpful. So you might look to that, and, you can search online, do keyword searches and stuff to turn up some of those. I don't know of any anthology or collection where someone's gathered those suttas together thematically. So you'll have to dig around a little bit. Junko. I'm a software engineer on vacation developing a web app for meditation. The idea is to make an online commitment and have stats available. Do you think this is helpful? I think it could be very helpful for people. Apparently, anytime we measure something, it makes us a little bit more honest. We're very good at self-deception, so yeah, I think that could be helpful for people. It can have the unintended side effects sometimes of constellating certain ways of being and becoming and selfing, but hopefully the people attracted to it will find more benefit in it than harm. I see a question from Zuri here about reflecting on something tomorrow. I guess it's this one, huh? How desire structures lead to dukkha? Well, I won't be on the morning coffee time tomorrow, but I can reflect on that tomorrow. And we can talk about it next Monday. It's one of the more interesting subjects for me. Okay, I am out of time, friends. And I'm sure we've lost a few people already who had to go off for other things and work. But as we're just doing this once a week, I'll be a little more liberal with my time as I can. So great to see so many people back. And hope everyone has a good week. Keep at it. Keep at the practice. Keep putting one foot in front of the others. Step by step, drop by drop. We can do this. So that's my closing encouragement for you. And have a good week. And I'll see you all next Monday on our morning coffee time. Bye for now, friends.